All right, so I'm back again here with another Banadir Fragrance inspired fragrance video. And what I have here in this video is going to be 5 different fragrances. Now, of these 5, I've already gone over one of the fragrances in the previous video. I'm going to be going over that fragrance again in this video since I have gotten a sample of the original fragrance. So just want to kind of go over that again and really kind of drill down on the differences between the original fragrance and Banadir's version. All right. Now, what I have here in this video is number 9, which number 9, this is Banadir's take on Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. So that one is number 9. I have number 11, which this is going to be 11 is Banadir's take on Dior's Sauvage. After that, I have number 12, which this is 12 is Banadir's take on Baccarat Rouge 540, the EDP. 15 is going to be Banadir's take on Good Girl Gone Bad by Killian. And number 22, this is the one that I had already kind of gone over in the previous video. So this is the Afternoon Swim interpretation from Banadir. And this is the one that we're going to be kind of, doing a side-by-side comparison with the original Afternoon Swim with. All right. So just to get started here, I'm not going to go over any of the presentation or anything like that. I already did that in the previous video. So if you want to see like how these look inside of the boxes and stuff like that, I would definitely refer, or advise that you go over to the first video that I did for Banadir Fragrance Inspired Fragrances. Just to get started here, let's go ahead and start off with number 9. So again, number 9, this is their take on Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. And, while I do think that this is one of the better inspirations of Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum, definitely, I think the only other Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum inspired fragrance that I really smelled before that I can remember was probably like Alexandria Fragrances version. I believe that one was based off of the Eau de Parfum. And that one, I think it might be called Blue Memoir or something like that. In my opinion, I really didn't think that one came super close at all. That was definitely one of Alexandria Fragrances, rare misses that they have, with recreating fragrances. And I do think that this is absolutely better than that. Now, do I think that this was one of the ones that like really impressed me out of, all of the ones that I got from Banadir? Probably not. With this one, just from the initial opening, the Banadir version, to me, it opens up like a lot more kind of peppery than what Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum does. Yeah, definitely more peppery, and just overall, I mean, I feel like the Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum, the way that this is kind of just blended and balanced, I don't really get the exact same sort of feeling from, number 9. Like I said, it definitely comes off a little bit more kind of peppery and a little bit more rough than what the Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum does. But I mean, I would still say probably within the initial opening, it's still around like maybe 80% or so, close to Bleu de Chanel. And, really, to me, where this really kind of shines is definitely in the dry down. This absolutely does smell, at least probably about 90 to 95% close to Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. Now, for it to actually get that close, it does probably take about a good hour and a half to 2 hours or so before I really start feeling like, okay, yeah, this is definitely, you know, Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. And one thing that I can also say is this number 9 does also seem to be a little bit more brighter than what Bleu de Chanel is. This to me, you know, while it does kind of come off slightly sort of bright, at least in the initial opening, there's still kind of like a sort of dark, sort of shower gel feel to Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. Whereas to me, I feel like the Banadir version, yeah, the citrus in this just comes off a little bit more brighter. A little bit more brighter, and I feel like the musk, you know, that you kind of get within the Bleu de Chanel from like the start of the fragrance, it doesn't necessarily come across the exact same way, you know, in the Banadir number 9. But I would say overall, this is probably like a good, I would say probably about 85% close or so to Bleu de Chanel just overall. So I really do think that this is one of the better interpretations. It, you know, just like all of the other Banadir interpretations, it does have a nice sort of richness to it, with this being, you know, an extrait de parfum. And, you know, again, I've only had this for, I don't know, it's probably been like a week or maybe 2 weeks. I can't remember. This may definitely change over time, you know, over the next couple of months or so, and start to get more and more closer to Bleu de Chanel. But I think as it stands right now, this was probably one of my least favorite out of all of the ones that I got. But again, it is definitely one of the better Bleu de Chanel interpretations that I've smelled. I just think when it comes down to, you know, Bleu de Chanel, you pretty much, this is one of those fragrances where you just have to buy the real thing if you want, you know, that Bleu de Chanel experience and smell. So, like I said, overall, number 9, I would give this about an 85% close or so. The performance is, you know, definitely pretty good on this. At least about 7 to 8 hours or so is what I get out of this fragrance. And to me, the projection is actually a little bit stronger than what it is in the original Bleu de Chanel. The Bleu de Chanel, to me, it definitely comes across as a lot more sort of balanced in terms of the blend, and more smoother. But this, the Banadir fragrance, this one is definitely going to be a little bit louder than what Bleu de Chanel is. All right. So overall rating, I would give number 9 probably like a good 7.5 out of 10, 7.5 to 8 or so at the highest. Not terrible at all. Definitely, like I said, one of the better Bleu de Chanel inspired fragrances. But you know, this again is just a scent profile that I haven't really smelled anyone come, you know, like 95% close overall or anything like that to the original scent profile. All right. So that one was number 9. The next is number 11, which, yeah, this one was the Sauvage interpretation. So the Sauvage interpretation, I was actually pretty impressed with. So this immediately, when I smelled it, I was like, oh yeah, this is Dior Sauvage. Now, mind you, I hadn't smelled Dior Sauvage in like a few years. I did have a bottle of that fragrance for a little while, and I just sold it because I, for whatever reason, just wasn't really wearing it like that. But yeah, this is definitely Sauvage for sure. I would even say This also does project a little bit better off of my skin anyway than, you know, what the original Sauvage does. Like, to me, this more so kind of reminds me of what Sauvage used to smell like back in like 2016, 2017, where it was, you know, definitely a lot stronger than what it is now today after they've kind of reformulated it. This definitely, it more so smells like those kind of pre-formulation or pre-reformulation, you know, bottles of the fragrance. And it definitely, it gives you that nice, you know, sort of fresh, again, shower gel blue fragrance type of smell that really kind of like cold and almost sort of metallic sort of smell to it. The bergamot in this is definitely, you know, nice and sharp in the initial opening of the fragrance. And just overall, this does smell a little bit more, you know, sort of concentrated and a little bit more stronger than what Sauvage does. Again, because all of these fragrances are extrait de parfum. So, like I said, I'm liking this one a lot. I would say if I had to choose between, you know, a current bottle of Dior Sauvage and this, I'm definitely choosing this over Sauvage every time, because like I said, this definitely, it does remind me a lot of, you know, what those pre-reformulation bottles of Sauvage, the EDT version anyway, smelled like. Now obviously I don't have a bottle of Sauvage EDT from, you know, back around that time to compare it with. I just have this sample of Sauvage, you know, that I basically compared the two with. And I can definitely tell that this is, you know, one of the more kind of newer formulations of Sauvage. You know, they've definitely, I would say, watered the scent down a lot. Because I mean, this stuff, it used to be like really, really strong. I guess you could even kind of, some people would probably consider it like obnoxiously strong. You know, like I said, especially around that time during like 2016, during 2016 to 2017. But now, you know, the fragrance has definitely gotten a lot weaker since then. And, you know, you smell it for sure when you smell, you know, these two. Now, what I will say is when you smell the two side by side, I do think that the bergamot in Sauvage is maybe just a little bit more sweeter in Sauvage than what it is in this Banadir version. Like, I think really that's the only difference that I'm really getting between the two fragrances. And it's maybe like a 3 to 5% difference. Like it's very, very small, very negligible. And it's something that I don't think that anybody would be able to tell in the air. This would only be something that you would be able to tell smelling the two side by side. I don't even think the most avid, you know, Sauvage wearer that wears the fragrance, you know, as their like signature scent would really be able to tell the difference between, you know, Sauvage and this. Maybe other than the fact that, you know, this does have slightly better projection, you know, than what the original Sauvage does. All right. So yeah, this one, like I said, I was very, very impressed with the way that this smelled. As far as the, you know, performance on this, performance well over 10 hours. So, I mean, again, this definitely performs just like how the original batches of, you know, Sauvage used to back in the day. And in terms of the projection, I would say it's at least probably about maybe a foot, you know, more than what the original Sauvage is, you know, at least the sample that I have of the fragrance. So it is definitely stronger, in my opinion, than the original Sauvage. You know, at least a current formulation of that fragrance. All right. Now for closeness rating, I would say this is easily like at least 95% close to Dior Sauvage. You know, Like I said, the bergamot in Sauvage maybe is about 3 to 5% more sweeter than what it is in this. Outside of that, you're getting the exact same feeling, the exact same, you know, sort of experience with this. A ton of embroxin, a ton of bergamot, you know, a very sort of shower gel, kind of almost cold metallic sort of feel from the fragrance. You're getting that with 11, you know, just like you do in Sauvage. So, yeah, man, I would say my closeness rating, this would be 95%. My overall rating on this, I would say, is easily a 9 out of 10 for sure. I'm one of the people that, you know, I still do like Sauvage a lot. I've always liked Sauvage, really all versions of it. I would say probably my least favorite version is honestly the Elixir version. I mean, I'll still wear Elixir, but I definitely prefer the EDT, EDP, and Parfum versions over the Elixir. And then the Eau Forte version, I just haven't smelled. So again, man, number 11, this one was one of the better ones, I would say, out of these 5, all right? Now, the next one, number 12, this is the Baccarat Rouge 540 interpretation. This one was very, very good. Very good. I would say so good that, you know, to me, this was like the best Baccarat Rouge 540 interpretation that I've smelled. And, you know, just smelling it side by side with the original Baccarat Rouge 540, I don't think that there's any reason at all for you to pay, definitely not, you know, the retail price for Baccarat Rouge 540, but even if you were to say, for instance, get Baccarat Rouge 540 EDP from like a discounter, I think typically at discounters you can probably get a bottle of that for maybe like $250 to $300 or so for a 70 ml bottle. I don't think that, you know, it's, especially if you know that you can, you know, get your hands on something like this, I don't think it makes sense for you to go out and spend that extra money on the Baccarat Rouge 540 unless you're just somebody who wants to have that bottle on your shelf. You know, at the end of the day, that I think is really all it comes down to. Maybe you're like a MFK collector and you want that for the rest of the line, but this, I mean, this smells like damn near identical to Baccarat Rouge 540. It has the same sort of like, it's the same sort of airy, cloudy, sort of wispy type of feel that Baccarat Rouge 540 has. The smell, I mean, it's like almost identical, man. I mean, really, I would say it is identical because honestly, I really don't, it's very hard for me to discern any sort of real differences between this and Baccarat Rouge 540. I think this was probably the closest interpretation, like out of, I believe I have like 10 of these in total from Banadir. And I think this number 12 was probably the closest out of each one. Like this was probably the one that was like the closest thing to like a 1-to-1 basically. And when I smelled this, you know, obviously next to Baccarat Rouge, but also next to the Al Haramain Amber Oud Rouge, this definitely, you could tell, you know, that there was a difference between this and Baccarat Rouge 540 and the, you know, the Amber Oud Rouge. The Amber Oud Rouge, that definitely in the opening had a slight sort of alcohol blast to it for sure, you know, that I didn't get at all from this or the original Baccarat Rouge 540. And both of these were also noticeably kind of stronger than what the Amber Oud Rouge was as well. That definitely seemed like a more, a slightly more watered down version. It's still a very kind of high quality, high tier sort of, interpretation of the fragrance for sure. But to me, it doesn't match up with the quality of, number 12 from Banadir. Especially once you get into like the far dry down, to me, the strength of the Amber Oud Rouge compared to Baccarat Rouge 540 and number 12 definitely starts to drop off a little bit. And it also, to me, it kind of smells more of sort of like a slightly more two-dimensional fragrance, as opposed to like, number 12 or even the original. These two, they smell more sort of three-dimensional, more complex, more rich. And yeah, man, I don't notice or detect like any differences whatsoever between this and the original Baccarat Rouge 540 EDP. So to me, I would say if you know about this fragrance, if you know that this exists, and you've been looking at maybe getting a bottle of Baccarat Rouge 540, or maybe you already have one and you're almost down to like your last sprays of that fragrance, and you're like, saving those until you get to like a really special occasion or something like that, I would absolutely recommend that you go out and get a bottle of this. Again, these fragrances are only $39.99 each right now. And like I said, I don't pick up on any differences at all between this and the original Baccarat Rouge 540. If there are any differences, like I said, I don't pick up on them. And, to me, this is, it's so close that, again, I don't think that it makes any sense for you to pay however much, Baccarat Rouge 540 goes for now over, just getting a $40 bottle of this. So, as far as the performance goes, this is basically eternal for the most part, just like Baccarat Rouge 540. So, well past 12 hours. The projection on it is also obviously extremely strong, and so is the sillage. The Baccarat Rouge 540 scent profile is just one of those scents where when you walk into a room, as your scent trail kind of, gets in the air, it just kind of just sits there and just hangs. I've gone into stores before where somebody was wearing this fragrance or this scent profile or whatnot, and they may or may not have even been in the store anymore, but I could smell each part of the store that they had been in. That's just, that's the way that this scent, behaves. And definitely you're going to get that type of, performance in terms of the projection and sillage with number 12. All right. For the closeness rating, I'm going to say like 99% basically. There may be a 1 to 2% difference possibly between this and Baccarat Rouge 540 EDP. I can't pick up on it. Maybe some other people may be able to, but I can't. That's the honest truth. So 99% close, I would say. And then, as far as my overall rating, this would easily be like a 9.5 out of 10, man. So really, really good job on number 12 from Banadir. All right, so the next one on the list, this one is number 15 from Banadir Fragrance. So this is their take on Good Girl Gone Bad. And, this fragrance to me is pretty good, man. Obviously, this is a feminine, women's fragrance. So, I mean, I don't really have, I guess, too much necessarily to really say about this. I did kind of wear each one of these, side by side on both of my arms to kind of get, a feeling for how each one sort of smelled compared to each other. And while this is definitely very, very close to, the Good Girl Gone Bad, and it smells of, the exact same quality for the most part, I will say that the number 15, it does, in my opinion, kind of lack it lacks a little bit of the floral aspect that you get from Good Girl Gone Bad. To me, Good Girl Gone Bad is definitely a little bit more floral. The floral smell definitely more sort of natural smelling, for sure. And even, I guess you could say that makes the fragrance come across slightly more kind of greener, you could say. Greener and earthier than what it does in number 15. Number 15, to me, it comes across a little bit more sweeter and more kind of playful than what the original Good Girl Gone Bad does. This, to me, definitely, it has a little bit more of an emphasis on that peach note, for sure. So yeah, definitely more peach is what you get with this, and less florals, for sure. But overall, I mean, I would say outside of those two things, you know, it for the most part does kind of smell about the same as Good Girl Gone Bad. But again, just not as heavy on the florals, you know, as Good Girl Gone Bad. So, you know, I think really it'll kind of depend on whether or not you like that aspect of the fragrance or not. You know, in terms of whether or not you actually like that or not. But, you know, at least, you know, for me, I do think that if I were to smell the two on somebody else, I do think that I probably would prefer the Good Girl Gone Bad, you know, the original, just a little bit more. I do think that the extra sort of floral feel that you get from, you know, that fragrance, it does definitely add, you know, a little bit more character to the fragrance. But, you know, I think overall, this is still a very, very good interpretation. Now, I haven't smelled any other interpretation of this scent, so, you know, I can't really say this is like the absolute best, but it is still, again, extremely close to Good Girl Gone Bad. Performance wise, this is also pretty good. To me, it projects a little bit better than what Good Girl Gone Bad does. And in terms of, you know, how that projection is, it's at least, I would say it's overall arm's length, probably about 4 to 5 feet or so. And yeah, that's at least for about the first hour and a half to 2 hours. As far as the longevity goes, easily over 10 hours with this. And as far as the closeness rating goes, I would say this is around that kind of 85 to 90% close at best. So, you know, definitely a pretty good interpretation of the by Kilian. You know, the quality for the most part, I think, is on par with the Kilian in terms of, you know, the richness. I just think that, you know, possibly Celine maybe opted to go further in the sort of fruitier direction with this fragrance. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's kind of what it feels like with this one. All right. So really, really good. Like I said, about 85 to 90% close. And then overall rating for this, I don't necessarily know that I want to even give this an overall rating because it's a women's fragrance. I'm not really that much, you know, like that's why I don't really do women's fragrances on this channel, mainly just kind of unisex and men's fragrances. But, you know, I mean, I think if I were to smell this on somebody else, you know, this would be like an easy 8 out of 10 or so, I think, overall. So that's pretty much what I would give this one as my like overall rating. It's an 8 out of 10. All right. And then the last one on the list, this one is number 22. So this is the afternoon swim interpretation. Now, the afternoon swim interpretation, this, like I mentioned before in the previous video, at first I was just kind of comparing this to the Pinus Orin. And Pinus Orin, I can say after getting the sample afternoon swim now, Pinus Orin to me is actually still closest, you know, to afternoon swim. But even though this is not as close to afternoon swim as what Pinus Orin is, I actually prefer the way that this comes across more than I do Afternoon Swim. And the reason for that is, to me, the citruses in this are a little bit more emphasized than what they are in Afternoon Swim. Afternoon Swim kind of has this, like, I kind of, consider it like a musky sort of like undertone to the fragrance. That's really the best way for me to kind of describe it. And then, you do also, you get, the orange citruses as well. But you get a lot of that sort of musky sort of feel to the fragrance. It's almost kind of like a musky sort of cloud over the citruses. Whereas in the Banadir version, to me, the muskiness is toned way down in this. And you're just kind of left with like the juices from the orange in the bergamot citruses. And I would say the sort of like the rinds from those fruits as well. So basically kind of like you just cut open or sliced open, a bergamot and an orange. And you kind of have them sitting on a cutting board. The juices are kind of dripping everywhere. And you just kind of pick one up and go right in and you just smell it. Now, I think, some people, they probably will still prefer the way that the Afternoon Swim smells. Again, for me personally, this actually comes across a little bit more brighter and more sort of like energetic to me. And at least, for me, in my taste anyway, I think I do prefer the Banadir version over the Afternoon Swim. It just, like I said, it comes across a little bit more brighter, a little bit more citrus forward, less musky. And yeah, man, I mean, it's still giving you, I would say, about the same experience for the most part, just a little bit brighter. Just a little bit brighter. That's the best that I can kind of describe it. But yeah, I mean, again, if you're wanting something that is the closest, to Afternoon Swim, then I think that you would probably want to consider something more like Pinus Oran, or like if you wanted to go to Alexandria route, something like Afternoon Splash from Alexandria. But this, I guess you could say, is a little bit more of a twist, but not necessarily. I mean, this is still, in my opinion, at least about like 90% close. To me, it's Afternoon Swim just with the muskiness toned way down. And, you're just kind of left more so with a lot more of the sort of juicy citruses and like the rinds of those fruits. So yeah, man, I really, really do enjoy the way that number 22 smells. Like I said, I enjoyed the way that this smelled over the Pinus Oran. So much so that I just sold Pinus Oran, because I'm like, I'm not going to keep both of these, obviously. And, this is the one that I actually prefer the smell of. So, I would say, definitely check this one out. You may or may not like the way that this one smells, especially if you're like a diehard Afternoon Swim, fan. And, maybe that's a fragrance that you wear all the time, especially in the summertime. Maybe if you're that type of person and you're just used to the way the Afternoon Swim smells, maybe you might not like this one. This might be a little bit different from what, you were expecting. But I think if you're somebody who has never smelled the real Afternoon Swim, and maybe all you've ever smelled is like a clone of it or something like that, this, I think, will definitely still be like a really solid choice for you. Now for the performance, The performance on this is not bad at all. I get at least about 7 hours or so of total longevity with this. And in terms of the projection, this does project a little bit longer than what the afternoon swim does on me. So like afternoon swim, probably after like the first hour or so, you know, it is definitely going to dial down a lot. This gives you at least a solid hour and a half to 2 hours or so of, you know, at least about an arm's length of projection. Then it does dial back a little bit for sure, but it definitely lasts, you know, to me, longer than what afternoon swim does. So overall, man, very, very happy with the way that number 22 smells. Like I said, I definitely do prefer this one over the original afternoon swim. All right, so as far as my closeness rating, this one I would say is about, I would say 90% close or so to afternoon swim. And then overall rating, this would definitely be a 9.5 for sure. Definitely one of my favorite that I got from this, all of these fragrances basically. All right, so that is my take on these 5 fragrances. Definitely let me know in the comments what you all think about these fragrances, especially if you all have actually picked these up from Banadir. And if you have you also compared them with the original fragrances? And do you agree with my assessment of how close these come? All right. So let me know in the comments below. Also, I'll have links in the description to where you can pick all of these up. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you all in the next video.